The Mississippi River just dropped 47% in 72 hours. Not slowly, not gradually. In 3 days, one of the most powerful rivers on Earth lost nearly half its water, and nobody can explain where it went. But here is what is not making the headlines. When the water pulled back, it exposed a riverbed that has not seen open air in recorded human history, and what scientists found down there stopped them cold. Ancient fissures splitting wide open, material buried for 60,000 years before the last ice age, pushing up through cracks that did not exist 3 days ago. And directly beneath that riverbed, the most dangerous fault system in North America just recorded its strongest activity in 40 years. 18 million Americans drink from this river. 14 major bridges cross it. And tonight, the ground underneath it is moving. So the question every scientist is afraid to answer is this: is the river dying? Or is it trying to warn us about something much, much worse? February 25th, 2026, 6:47 in the morning, Central Standard Time. Automated gauge stations along the upper Mississippi River begin transmitting data that stops engineers cold at the United States Geological Survey Monitoring Center in Reston, Virginia. The numbers on the screen are not a sensor malfunction. They are not a calibration error. The river is dropping at rates that exceed every model, every projection, every worst-case scenario in the agency's entire database. By 7:15, the Memphis gauge station confirms what upstream sensors have been screaming for hours. Water levels at Memphis have fallen 19 feet in 72 hours. The reading represents a 47% reduction in flow volume. Engineers stare at figures that belong in a geological catastrophe simulation, not in a live data feed from America's most vital waterway. Then, the cascade begins. At 8:02, the Vicksburg gauge follows, then Natchez, then Baton Rouge. The drop is not isolated to a single stretch of river. It is rolling southward along the entire lower Mississippi corridor like a wave of impossible numbers, washing through every monitoring station in sequence. The United States Army Corps of Engineers activates emergency protocols at 8:30. Navigation warnings go out immediately. Barge traffic across the entire lower Mississippi receives orders to halt operations. Port operators in New Orleans begin urgent assessments of water intake infrastructure as the river that supplies drinking water to over 18 million Americans continues its catastrophic retreat. By noon, the scope of what is happening becomes impossible to minimize. The National Weather Service has recorded no significant precipitation deficit in the preceding 72 hours that could explain a drop of this magnitude. There are no upstream dam releases, no diversion events, no operational explanations sitting in any agency's incident log anywhere in the country. The Mississippi River is not responding to anything on the surface. Something is happening below. Senior hydrologist Dr. Patricia Walters at the USGS Mississippi River Science Center in La Crosse, Wisconsin, reviews the integrated data with growing alarm. She has spent 31 years studying this river. She watched the historic drought of 1988. She documented the record lows of 2012. She has never seen anything like this. The rate of decline does not match any surface hydrology event in the scientific record. The river is not draining downstream. The volume is simply disappearing. The water is going somewhere that her models cannot account for. The numbers keep falling, and the questions they are raising have no comfortable answers. When a river retreats this fast, it does not just leave behind exposed mud and stranded boats. It leaves behind a confession. And what that confession is about to reveal will alarm every scientist, every engineer, and every emergency planner watching the data that morning. By the afternoon of February 25th, stretches of the Mississippi riverbed between Memphis and Vicksburg are exposed to open air for the first time in recorded history. The river has pulled back so far and so fast that what remains looks less like a waterway and more like the floor of a drained world. United States Geological Survey field teams scramble to reach access points along the bank. What they find when they descend to the newly exposed river floor sends urgent communications racing up the chain to agency directors, to the Department of the Interior, and to the White House Situation Room. The riverbed is not behaving like a riverbed. Across a 14-mile stretch south of Memphis, field geologist Dr. Aaron Briggs documents fissures opening across the exposed alluvial sediment. They measure 3 to 7 feet wide and descend beyond the reach of any probe his team carries in the field. The cracks are fresh. The edges are sharp and unweathered. These are not erosion features carved slowly by current or by time. These are fractures. Active, recent, and oriented in a pattern that makes every geologist on the team go very quiet. The orientation aligns directly with the new Madrid seismic zone. But the fissures are only the beginning. Field teams collecting sediment samples from the exposed riverbed begin detecting something that triggers immediate contamination protocols. Black organic material is seeping upward through the cracks. Not petroleum, not agricultural runoff. Something older. Carbon dating results transmitted from the University of Memphis Emergency Laboratory within 6 hours of sample collection reveal the material is between 22,000 and 60,000 years old. Ancient organic deposits, sealed beneath the Mississippi alluvial plain since before the last ice age, are now surfacing through fractures that did not exist 72 hours ago. Dr. Renata Okafor, a sedimentary geologist at Louisiana State University, arrives at the site by helicopter on the evening of February 25th. She examines the samples with an expression her colleagues have never seen on her face before. The fractures penetrating this deep into the substrate, she says, indicate subsurface structural failure at a scale that science does not currently have a framework to explain. Something beneath the riverbed is giving way. Methane readings spike at 3 separate locations along the exposed corridor. Instruments detect concentrations 40 times above background levels rising directly from the fissure openings. The ancient organic material is not just surfacing, it is outgassing. The riverbed is exhaling gases that have been trapped underground since the last ice age. Scientists racing to document every inch of exposed floor before water levels potentially return describe arriving at a landscape that belongs to a completely different geological era. The Mississippi riverbed in 2026 is showing the world something it buried tens of thousands of years ago. And the reason it is showing anyone at all is the question keeping every geologist on that riverbank wide awake through the night. Here is what geologists are not saying in press briefings. They are saying it in their data. The 47% drop in Mississippi River flow volume in 72 hours cannot be explained by any single cause. What the data is revealing instead is a convergence. Multiple catastrophic stressors arriving simultaneously, amplifying each other, creating a compound failure event that no individual model predicted because no individual model was designed to account for all of them at once. The first stressor is the one that has been building for decades. The Mississippi River Basin has been in a deepening drought cycle since 2022. Snowpack across the upper Midwest and northern Rockies entered the 2025 to 2026 winter season at 61% of historical average. Groundwater recharge across the basin has been running negative for 38 consecutive months. The river has been operating on reserve capacity for years. What happened in the 72 hours preceding February 25th did not create a crisis. It collapsed a system that was already at its absolute limit. The second stressor is geological. In 1811 and 1812, the new Madrid seismic zone produced a sequence of earthquakes estimated between magnitude 7.5 and 8, the most powerful seismic events in recorded North American history. They rang church bells in Boston. They temporarily reversed the flow of the Mississippi River itself. In the 40 days preceding February 25, 2026, USGS seismometers beneath the lower Mississippi Valley recorded 417 microseismic events. Seismologist Dr. James Kellerman at the University of Memphis identifies the pattern as accelerating fault preparation along secondary structures within the new Madrid system. The third stressor arrives from below in a different way entirely. The Mississippi Embayment Aquifer System, a massive underground reservoir stretching beneath 7 states, has been experiencing anomalous pressure changes since November 2025. Monitoring wells across Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi record rapid depressurization in deep confined aquifer layers. The pressure losses are not consistent with extraction. The aquifer structure itself is changing. When these 3 stressors converge, the river does not simply drain downstream. It loses volume into the earth beneath it, and the earth beneath it is no longer holding. At the USGS National Center in Reston, Virginia, geophysicists analyzing the integrated data stream from the Mississippi corridor are having conversations they are not yet having in public. The pattern emerging from combined seismic, hydrological, and ground deformation data is not consistent with drought alone. It is not consistent with aquifer depletion alone. The data is describing something the scientific community has theoretical frameworks for, but has never observed in a populated river system in modern times. Subsurface structural deformation beneath an active river corridor. The riverbed is not just losing water, the substrate beneath it is moving. GPS ground deformation sensors installed along the lower Mississippi Valley as part of the EarthScope network recorded vertical land motion anomalies in the 72 hours preceding the drop. Stations near Greenville, Mississippi showed subsidence of 1.3 centimeters. Stations near Helena, Arkansas showed subsidence of 0.9 centimeters. These are not large numbers individually. In the context of a river corridor that should show near-zero vertical motion, they represent something extraordinary. Dr. Sylvia Marchand at the St. Louis University Earthquake Center pulls up seismic tomography data from the new Madrid zone and compares the subsidence pattern to the known fault geometry beneath the valley. The correlation is close enough to make her call her department chair at 11:45 at night. The subsidence is occurring in zones that directly overlay mapped secondary fault structures within the new Madrid system. The faults are not rupturing, they are creeping. Slow aseismic movement of fault surfaces generates no large earthquakes, but produces exactly the kind of subtle ground deformation now showing up across the GPS network. What creeping faults beneath a river valley mean for surface hydrology is not a solved scientific problem. But the hypothesis forming among geophysicists working the data on the night of February 25th is not a comforting one. If secondary New Madrid structures are experiencing accelerated creep, the alluvial sediments and fractured bedrock beneath the Mississippi riverbed may be developing permeability pathways that are allowing river water to drain into the deep subsurface at rates no hydrological model has ever been required to account for. The river is not disappearing into thin air. It is disappearing into the ground, and the ground beneath it is the most seismically dangerous real estate in the eastern United States. The Mississippi River is not just a waterway, it is the load-bearing wall of American civilization, and right now, that wall is cracking in ways that engineers, nuclear regulators, and city water managers are scrambling to calculate before the numbers run out. 14 major bridges carry highway and rail traffic across the lower Mississippi between Memphis and New Orleans. Every single one was engineered to specifications that assume a river maintaining flow volumes within historical ranges. When the riverbed drops and the substrate beneath it begins to shift, the assumptions embedded in every foundation calculation made for every one of those bridges becomes a question rather than a certainty. The Hernando de Soto Bridge, carrying Interstate 40 across the Mississippi at Memphis, is already a structure with a complicated history. A crack in a steel beam shut it down in 2022 for months, cutting off a critical freight artery and costing the regional economy billions. Bridge inspection teams were dispatched to the structure on the afternoon of February 25th with orders to assess foundation conditions under the new river levels. What the sonar imaging of the bridge's river pier foundations revealed was transmitted to the Tennessee Department of Transportation in a report that was immediately classified as sensitive infrastructure information. That report was not released to the public. 3 nuclear facilities operate in proximity to the lower Mississippi corridor. The Riverbend Station in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and the Grand Gulf Nuclear Station in Port Gibson, Mississippi, both draw cooling water directly from the river. On the afternoon of February 25th, both facilities activated contingency cooling protocols and notified the Nuclear Regulatory Commission of anomalous intake conditions. Water treatment plants serving populations along the entire lower corridor face the same brutal arithmetic. The intake pumps are fixed. The river is falling. Memphis Light, Gas and Water issues a warning at 3:17 in the afternoon. If the river drops another 4 feet, Memphis faces a drinking water emergency for a city of 630,000 people. For 3 cities along the lower corridor, the margin between the current river surface and catastrophic intake failure is less than 5 feet. For 1 city, it is less than 3. Emergency engineers are working through the night calculating exactly where those thresholds are, and the river has not stopped falling. The lower Mississippi carries approximately 500 million tons of cargo every single year, more freight than any other waterway in the Western Hemisphere. Grain, coal, petroleum products, fertilizers, industrial chemicals, manufactured goods moving between the American interior and the Port of New Orleans in an unbroken stream that the entire national economy depends on without ever thinking about it. All of it stops on February 25th. The Army Corps of Engineers' minimum navigation depth of 9 feet is breached at 4 locations between Memphis and the Gulf before noon. Barges that were mid-route when the orders came through sit stranded in water too shallow to move. Terminal operators halt loading operations across every major port facility on the lower corridor simultaneously. The Port of New Orleans, America's largest port by tonnage, goes quiet in ways it has not gone quiet since Hurricane Katrina. Container vessels waiting offshore receive indefinite delay notifications. The docks that handle 40% of all American agricultural exports sit idle as the river that feeds them continues its retreat. The economics collapse just as fast. A bushel of corn that costs 11 cents to ship by barge costs 63 cents to ship by rail. Farmers across the Corn Belt who planted last spring based entirely on barge shipping rates are now staring at loss calculations that no insurance product was ever designed to cover. Grain elevator operators watch in real time as the price of moving their inventory to coastal export terminals calculates itself into ruin. Mandatory water restriction orders reach 6 Louisiana parishes by 2 in the afternoon. Residents are told to stop all non-essential water use immediately. In cities where people turned on their taps this morning without a second thought, emergency conservation protocols are now active. The economic ripple moves outward from the river in every direction simultaneously, and it does not stop at the water's edge. Supply chains connecting American farms to global markets begin seizing up within hours of the navigation shutdown. The Mississippi is not just failing as a river. It is failing as the economic spine of an entire continent. And the damage accumulating by the hour has no ceiling anyone can yet calculate. Scientists monitoring the Mississippi crisis are watching 4 indicators. Any one of them moving in the wrong direction transforms an unprecedented disaster into something emergency planners do not have a category for. Tonight, all 4 are alive, and none of them are moving in the right direction. The first is the rate of water level decline. As of the evening of February 25th, the drop has slowed, but has not stopped. If the rate accelerates again overnight, it means the subsurface drainage pathways are widening rather than stabilizing. Wider pathways mean faster loss. Faster loss means the timeline for critical infrastructure. Failure compresses from days to hours. The margin between the current situation and a cascade of simultaneous failures across bridges, nuclear cooling systems, and municipal water supplies is measured in feet. The river is still falling. The second indicator is seismic activity beneath the new Madrid zone. The microseismic swarm that has been building for 40 days must not escalate. USGS seismometers are set to alert protocols that automatically notify the National Earthquake Information Center if any event above magnitude 2.5 occurs within the primary fault zone. On the night of February 25th, those alerts have not triggered. Scientists are watching the silence with the specific kind of attention that knows silence can end without warning. Every hour that passes without escalation is not reassurance. It is simply another hour. The third indicator is methane flux from the exposed fissures. Field teams have established continuous monitoring at 6 locations along the exposed riverbed corridor. If methane concentrations keep climbing, it means the subsurface structural failure is progressing, not stabilizing. The ancient organic material surfacing through those cracks is not just a geological curiosity. It is a pressure gauge. And right now, that gauge is reading in a direction nobody wants to see. The fourth indicator is the one nobody is discussing in press conferences and everyone is discussing in the data rooms: ground deformation. If GPS stations along the lower valley record additional subsidence events overnight, the fault creep hypothesis is confirmed. And if it is confirmed, then the 47% drop in 3 days is not the event, it is the warning shot. The Mississippi did not break in 72 hours. It was breaking for decades. The drought cycle building since 2022. The aquifer drawing down for 38 consecutive months. the microseismic activity accumulating beneath the valley floor. February 25, 2026, is simply the moment the fractures became impossible to ignore. Climate models projected these conditions arriving by 2040. The jet stream shifts, the snowpack collapse, the aquifer depletion. Every model said there was time. Every model was wrong. 2026 did not wait for permission. And tonight, 6 states' worth of emergency managers are making calls their training never prepared them to make. The Mississippi River is not just a river. 31 states drain into its basin. 40% of all North American bird species depend on its corridor. The agricultural economy of the entire American interior moves on its current. For 2 centuries, it has been the circulatory system of this continent, the artery that keeps everything alive, the one system that the American economy was never designed to function without. And tonight, that system is failing in ways that science is still scrambling to explain. The new Marty seismic zone has been quiet for 200 years. But quiet is not the same as safe. In 1811 and 1812, it reminded the continent what it was capable of. It reversed the flow of this river. It created lakes where forests had stood. It rang church bells 1,000 miles away. The slow, quiet creep of deep faults beneath the Mississippi riverbed may not announce itself with a magnitude 8 earthquake. It may not announce itself at all. It may simply keep moving, keep widening those permeability pathways, keep pulling the river down into the earth in increments that compound faster than any response plan was written to address. The buffer systems that protected this river through generations of drought and stress are gone. The aquifer that absorbed centuries of pressure has been drawn below its recovery threshold. Each crisis hits harder than the last. Each recovery leaves the system weaker for what comes next. The Mississippi did not arrive at February 25, 2026 by accident. It arrived there through decades of accumulated stress that every model tracked and every timeline underestimated. The river is still falling. The fissures are still open. Ancient material buried for 60,000 years is still rising to the surface through cracks that did not exist 3 days ago. 18 million people are still depending on that water, and the ground beneath it is still moving in ways that nobody fully understands yet. Every geologist, hydrologist, and emergency planner watching the data tonight is asking the same question. Is this the warning, or has the main event already begun?